my research showed up that one of the significant causes of new homelessness, it's not, it's just, there are many causes, right? But there's one, is when a landlord, for perfectly fair reasons, needs to take their property back. Maybe it's because they've come back from abroad, they need to get back into their home, maybe they need to sell it, whatever it might be. And the tenants that are evicted through it's a no-fault eviction, they weren't in arrears, they haven't done anything wrong, but they need to leave, cannot find an alternative accommodation, end up actually rough sleeping, even though they're in work. But of course, if you've got nowhere to sleep, how can you keep working? I mean, if you're a lorry driver, you try driving a lorry for 8 hours a day when you've been sleeping rough all night. It's you know, you can see how suddenly
downward spiral.
These good, hard-working people who'd paid their rent find themselves freezing cold. You know, before you know it, they're at the bottom of the barrel. Poor things. I think there's some legislation being discussed that might create a new type of circumstance where actually a landlord cannot force someone out if they haven't got a new home. I don't know the details, and this is me asking you actually.
Yeah, well, there's the Renters Reform Bill, which has been going through Parliament for a long time now.
Does that address this issue?
It's kind of moving forward this year, and the abolition or removal of Section 21 is within that bill for the reasons that you've given. I think it is very tricky because some landlords do need to sell up, but then there could be more awareness about selling a property as tenanted. So the property just gets passed on to another landlord who takes over the tenancy. And, you know, there's some, for instance, there's a platform called Vesta, which is a leading platform for buying and selling of tenanted properties, portfolios, blocks of flats, etc. So landlords don't necessarily have to get rid of a tenant, but very often, and I've experienced this myself, when I've gone to an estate agent and said, oh, I've got a tenant, I want to sell a tenanted property, the agent says, oh, no, you need to get rid of the tenant, you've got to sell it vacant possession. And they don't really explain why. It's relatively straightforward to sell a tenanted property. For new landlords coming into the sector, there couldn't be a safer way of getting started, because if you buy a tenanted property, you earn income from day one. You can see the tenant's rental payment history if they've paid the rent on time, and you can see how the tenant is looking after the property. So from a risk perspective, going back to what I said at the beginning, it's a lot less risky to buy a tenanted property already. Very often that property will have a letting agent attached to it who knows the tenant, knows the property, has managed it for the previous landlord. And so the tenant keeps their home and then just passes to another landlord who takes over the tenancy. So there needs to be more education about buying and selling of tenanted properties, the benefits of doing so. There's this slight fallacy that if you sell a tenanted property, you get a lot less money for it. I don't believe that's true. And if you are selling a tenanted property, you're earning rental income up to the day of completion. And if you choose to sell vacant possession, you could wait 3, 4, 5 months to complete that sale, whereby you're paying the mortgage, the standing utilities, the council tax, etc. So people need to understand the pros and cons of both situations. Then there's also, you know, the possibility of some government-supported scheme, but whereby the tenant could actually buy their rental home. So, you know, maybe there could be a tax incentive to landlords to get a capital gains reduction if they sold the rental property to their tenant. So, you know, these are all the ideas that are in the melting pot, but they're not, you know, they're not widely known, not really getting much traction. And yeah, I think it's very difficult if a tenant is given notice through no fault of their own, and then they struggle to find another landlord to take them on. They may not be able to access social housing for the reasons that we've discussed. And as you say, once they're out of rental accommodation and they're sofa surfing or whatever they're doing, going back to the parents or whatever it may be, it's very hard to get back into private rented housing. So, yeah, there needs to be more thought about this, joining up the dots.